All right, welcome to TAP. I'm so happy that you're tapped in, tuned in with us today. Yet another really exciting topic. I'm really pleased that you are here, David Kirk-Campbell. Welcome.
Well, thank you. I've looked forward to this conversation.
Yeah, me too. I really have. And it's so funny because we live in the same country. You also speak Danish. And um, and we just recently discovered that we're even giving sessions at the same
Patient.
the same location, right?
Yeah.
Yet I thought it was good to have this conversation in English because you're from the US, and the concept that we're going to talk about that you're the founder of. Uh, I mean, you've published a book that was also in English, right?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah, so we might as well get as many as possible to hear this message. That's why I chose it to be in English. So you are the founder of Touching Dialogue.
Yes.
And you are a psychotherapist, a gestalt therapist. And all that I want to know today is really what touching dialogue is about and how it differs from other bodily therapies. Yeah, how do you answer that question? What is it?
What is it? Well, I'll also just add, I'm also trained as a Rolfer and have been Rolfing 50 years. So, what is touching dialogue? Well, actually, I can answer that and talk into that question on many levels.
Mm.
Because on an abstract level, it is a body-centered psychotherapy. And if we talk more conscious, unconscious, the touching dialogue is using touch as a way of communicating, so that the the unconscious becomes more actually more positive, and certainly so that a person feels safe to be more receptive to their unconscious. As I see it, there's a filter, as I experience it, I should say, rather than see it. There's a filter between the conscious and the unconscious. And when the person doesn't feel safe enough, the filter closes down and not much comes through. And we don't remember dreams so much. And we don't really get the positive benefit of our dreams. And so when the unconscious feels safe enough, this filter opens up and we begin to benefit from our unconscious. And that's like to allow our unconscious to feel safe enough. On There's also the psychotherapeutic level, because uh, the first thing that happens with touch and dialogue session, actually the first session and each session, is that there's a contract, which is very common in most psychotherapies, and it's a contract that is will benefit the client and is measurable and is intrinsic to them. So this contract actually builds in a success factor for what happens with the touching, because the touching, now I'm going to talk on the cellular level, actually the cell membrane level. So that on this level, it's a very the type of touch is very gentle, very contactful, and it is a dialogue, because the touch is responding to the the messages, vibrations, the quality that is emanating from the cell membranes within the client. So it is an extremely sensitive touch. And this is part of what the training to be a touch and dialogue therapist is about, is to develop this sensitivity. So it, it's responding to the signals coming from the membranes, so that the body, the person, the soul that's that's bearing all of these cells around, um, 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 well, let me get back to the cell membranes, because it's really changing the cell membranes from from a state of contraction to a state of openness.
Mm.
And if I was to put contraction and openness, those are physical words, if I was to put those into emotional words, it's changing fear to courage.
Ah.
And it's changing um, um, caution to enthusiasm. And so it's on a simple. Sometimes I explain. Sometimes I'm talking with a child that's about 6-year-old, and they say, "Well, what do you do?" and I say, um, I, I use my hands, and I say I touch people so that a sense of fear and caution within them can change to enthusiasm, and then I make it even simpler. I say it's changing a no to a yes.
Mm.
And when this physically, there's also, see, when cell membranes are contracted, there's much less osmosis, so the whole physical functions of the cell slow down. And when there's expansion and openness, then there's more osmosis, so there's more transmission through the membranes of what we need to get in and what we need to get out.
Mm.
And so it's on the simplest level that it's changing a no to a yes.
Mm. Oh man, you said so much good stuff right there. I thought about, you were mentioning you have a contract in the beginning of a session with a client. You
Yes.
said that was helpful. How so?
How so? Well, I've learned through many experiences, beginning as a psychotherapist and a Rolfer, that if a person wasn't intrinsically motivated, if they didn't have their own reasons, if they weren't in some way uncomfortable, suffering, or in pain, emotional pain, then um, then the results would be restricted and limited. So if a teacher or a lover said, "Oh, you need to do Rolfing," sometimes the person says, "Well, my lover is going to break up from me if I don't do this." Then, if that happens, I don't accept. That's not a contract that I will accept. So I explain, and this becomes evident in the first session because there's more talking in the first session, and so then I don't accept that contract and explain to the person, and there's no charge for the first session. And usually, 8 times out of 10, that person will come back in about 5 to 6 months, and with really wanting wanting results for themselves. So that's part of the contract. But the contract also it needs to be something that how the person wants to change. That's the basic question I ask. How do you want to change? That's about behavior. I don't talk about cell membranes with the client. The cell membranes is what that's my actually. So I developed touch and dialogue in the 80s,
Mm-hmm.
and I began writing. I'm getting off on a different question now, but I developed it because at that time I was working with Rolfing and Gestalt psychotherapy, and sometimes I would use, or oftentimes it would be appropriate to use both Rolfing and Gestalt psychotherapy with the same client. The clients improved a lot. Physically, they improved from the Rolfing, and oftentimes when the person stopped sessions, they said, "Well, I'm satisfied with what's happened, but I'm not finished. I'm not completely satisfied. There's more. I want more out of life. I want more out of myself." And so then I began thinking, well, what is a way that could satisfy these people more? That could actually go to a deeper level. That that could, yeah. So then my mind didn't come up with an answer. So I actually, at that time, the room I worked in was rather large, and I moved in a desk and an old IBM manual typewriter, back in these are the early 80s actually.
Mm-hmm.
And so I scheduled sessions with time in between, 15 minutes. So I would write after every session. And during sessions, I would, especially if there was Rolfing, I would experiment with different ways of touching and see what the results were, and see what people said and what I felt. So after 3 years of doing this, then I realized, oh, actually, after 2 years, I realized something's emerging here. I'm getting something. Then I had to put words on what I was experiencing. And that's really how the book took 3 more years to write. But that's really how I got um, to writing the book and putting words on this. So it didn't come from thinking. It came from what my hands were feeling as I was really struggling and yearning to find a way to reach deeper into the change or transformation process for these clients. And part of it along the way, clients began to change their contracts and actually um, um, ask for deeper, more profound, more essential changes, layers or parts of themselves. So that was one not correlation, but one confirmation that that what I was exploring was valid or was working.
Absolutely. I can imagine
I
that.
got off the track. What was your question before?
No, I think you answered it very well in that, and I want to hear everything.
Well, you asked about the contract.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the contract also needs to be measurable.
Right.
So I use that phrase when I'm teaching, and what I mean by measurable is so that the person can, with their behavior, they can evaluate whether it's making a difference, whether they're really making progress toward the change which they've previously stated. And really, I tell clients, if you're not noticing change within 3 sessions, then we should evaluate and see if this is working or not. Because sometimes they don't notice any change, the behavior change, but they say, I really like this. I want to continue. Some people say, well, there's no behavior change. I want to stop, which is a very good reason to stop. But I'm so the contract is really, if you imagine a horse out in the field that's just eating out there, and the horse can run around and do what it wants to. So then when the owner comes along, they if they want to take a ride, they put a saddle on and they put a harness. So the harness is the means with which the rider steers the horse. So in this case, the metaphor breaks down because I'm only talking about the client, but the contract is like a harness on a horse. The rider is not the therapist.
Right.
That's totally fucked up. But
it's about the direction of where is it we want to go, and did we then go there? So you can
exactly. You understand me, because it's really about the direction. Because when the touching is this sensitive, and when the touching is responding, this is the dialogue. When the touching is responding to the early childhood and sometimes fetus longing for touch, then there is this transformation of the cell membranes and energy from no to yes. So then when this energy comes up, then if there isn't a very clear and defined, relevant personal contract, then this transformation doesn't have a direction. Your word is very good. The contract gives a direction to what is likely to be released through the touching part of the work.
I also thought about what you said in the very beginning, that you are making the unconscious more positive, and that there's a correlation between not having dreams and not, I don't know, not being in touch with yourself, or what. Everyone dreams, but not remembering your dreams and not benefiting from them. Um, that's just a really important point. I wanted to, could you say something more about that? Because I'm sure many people recognize that sometimes you remember and you can analyze your dreams, and sometimes you're in a maybe a more stressful period and you don't have the time for it, or you don't really
Mhm.
know what you dreamt. What
Mhm.
what is that about? Is then the unconscious, is that very negative if you can't remember your dreams?
Um, well, when I have a night without remembering dreams, then
Mm,
I feel like, well, I've missed something.
yeah,
I've missed opportunity.
yeah.
I'm really talking from my own experience, and I've had 9 different therapists through my life,
Mhm,
starting with doing psychoanalysis, and I actually have found out afterwards that the psychoanalyst that I used in Chicago was part of the Chicago School, which was a new school of psychoanalysis. I mean, and because he didn't ask me to free associate.
mm,
I did lie on the couch, and he was sitting above my head. I didn't see him, but we just talked. I
mm.
mean, it was very much like psychotherapy without eye contact.
Right.
Looking back, because I've had uh, 2 Jungian therapists and 2 Gestalt therapists and a transactional analysis therapist and humanistic eclectic um, therapist that most of her life was a mathematician. She was not my most recent, because actually to handle my family situation, I'm I'm in psychotherapy again now, but.
Mhm.
Anyway, so when I answer your question, I'm speaking from my own experience. I,
Right.
I haven't I haven't read this someplace,
Mhm.
um, but um, I notice what is the state of my being, awareness,
Mhm.
body level vibration when I don't remember
Yeah.
dreams, and I notice when I do remember,
Mhm.
and when I do remember dreams, um, I simply have um, uh, more peaceful, more calm. Um, it's like I have enough emotional reserve, enough um, sort of juice in my being to receive the dream.
Mhm.
Sometimes dreams are very inspiring, positive. Sometimes they're scary. Sometimes they're nightmares.
Mhm.
Sometimes they're frightening. But to allow the dream, for me, from my own experience, I experienced it when I feel safe enough, calm enough, like when I have this reserve of not as much energy, because sometimes I'm exhausted and I still dream. So it
Mhm.
isn't energy, but when there's enough, like some kind of reserve tank to process the dream, then this filter opens. I just imagine it as a filter. I'm not suggesting that there is some filter in the brain, but when maybe a valve is a better word than a filter,
Mhm.
because filters are more static. A valve you can open and close. So when I'm feeling, when I have this reserve to receive, to be able to process the dream, then the valve opens
Mhm.
and water can come through the valve. And when I'm feeling when I don't have this reserve, then and it's also a question of feeling safe enough on a very deep level. It isn't like safe with other people or safe worried that you're going to have a fire in the house, but I'm talking about your like deepest level of existence feels safe enough. Then then uh, then the valve opens. this inner imaginary valve. I'm just using it as a symbol, as a metaphor,
Yeah.
and that's how I experience it. And I have um, I do talk this way with clients, because some clients come and they say, "Well, I've really wanted to have a remember dreams here recently, but I haven't."
Mm.
So this is what I experience.
Yes, and the reason why I ask is because I really recognize with that. I recognize that completely. That is totally my experience as well. That when I have the time, I do a little dream work when I wake up. But whether I do the dream work or not, write it down and analyze it, just the fact if I remember it or not, that says something about my state. So
Mhm.
that's really interesting. And then the next thing you're talking about, um, in it's about being open. I mean, I just wanna so we're sure what we're talking about. Sometimes it's good to say no, right? Sometimes it's good, and because we're really talking about the archetype of Pisces here, in the dream world and in the openness, open to spirit, open to seeing. But then what I've read about touching dialogue is that it's actually also an emphasis on the skin. So there's
Yeah.
something about the boundary. There's something about that maybe feeling unsafe that needs to be protected. Or how do you, what are your thoughts about that?
Well, it, so the skin is the physical boundary to our body, and it carries emotion, and it's protective. Um, and in the first meeting, another thing that is talked about is that it's very important for the person to say stop, which is another way of saying no.
Yeah.
I call it the stop agreement. So that that a touch and dialogue therapist is touching the person only with their permission. And actually, a touch and dialogue therapist will ask many times if they're changing the position or changing the way they touch. They will ask, "Is it okay for me to touch you here?" So it isn't just assumed because they're lying on the table. Like some massage therapists, they just move from one part of the body to the other. So this because uh, then another agreement that is made and explained is uh, um, well, actually with the stop agreement, then then the person has um, the well is offered the authority. They have to take the authority, but they're offered the authority to um, to say stop or no, and actually the saying stop and no becomes a very powerful um, uh, area to explore,
Mm.
because many people they're so up to that point in their life and as a child they're so adaptive that they have allowed people to touch them um, in ways that they really weren't comfortable with, and so so this the as sessions go along, oftentimes it becomes very relevant and appropriate to ask a client to say stop artificially. So it's structured by the therapist that it's artificial, but it often turns out to be that this is it's even the moments and minutes before they say stop, it's not artificial at all,
Mm.
because already a drama is going on inside of the person, and then they say stop, and then I take my hands off of them, and and then the drama continues with many patients, and this becomes really a series of of um, of experiences where where the client is offered the chance is the opportunity to say stop, and they experience that someone actually obeys them or does what they say.
Yeah.
And so this is involving directly. I'm answering your question about skin.
Yeah.
You may
Yeah.
not think so, but it really is a person um, integrating or empowering. They're connecting their skin to their emotions and their mind and their authority to say yes and no. And this is um, this is one way that touching dialogue is extremely. It helps so many clients that are really sort of when it comes to affection and touching and sex, they're really sort of off the track and are running out of. They're just functioning out of adaptation and wanting to please the other person,
Exactly.
not from their own source or not authentically. So this
Yeah.
this I really began to develop. This was actually a Rolfing session, but uh, um, I began to develop a sensitivity for this because in this Rolfing session, um, uh, I I was touching a woman's back, and I asked her, well, what do you feel that's going on here? And she felt that question was invasive, and she got very upset and stopped sessions. At that time, I was working with clients from a psychiatrist in Toronto had asked me to come up and work with his clients. So, uh, so then she was very angry and stopped. But luckily for me, I knew she was also seeing the psychiatrist for regular sessions.
Yeah.
And I had set up this yes and no um, stop agreement with her beforehand. So it was extremely powerful for her to say stop,
Yeah.
and stop the sessions. Then she came back 6 months later and said, so that like catapulted her really into a process that she talked about with her psychiatrist. She said, now I feel safe enough to allow you to touch me.
Mhm.
And I know that I have power now.
So before that, she didn't feel safe enough for you to touch her, but out of adaptation, she sought after some kind of body therapy. Is that how you see it?
Yes, that's exactly how I see it, and also the recommendation of her psychiatrist,
Mm.
because he recommended this for some of his clients.
Yeah.
So her coming to my office and the table that I was using was actually pure adaptation.
Mm. Yes, it really resonates. It really resonates, especially because I have those themes as well, and and many people do, right? It's a culturally programmed. It's a cultural program somehow for many of us to not pleasing. I'm talking about pleasing
Yes.
and over adapting. And if you were to ask me, what is this? What is that message on your back where you saw or something? I hope people maybe can recognize this, at least if you have the same issue, then you don't want to hurt the therapist by saying, I don't feel anything, or I don't know what it is. Or there's so many things in a session like that that can come up and it's not really authentic. Um,
Yeah, exactly. And touch and dialogue therapists um, are trained in many ways of dialoguing. So sometimes a client, well, the client can say it or can say, well, I just don't feel quite ready. And sometimes the therapist senses or I sense that well, they're not ready to lie on the table. So another way of working with touching dialogue, it's a dialogue.
Mm.
Actually, in cases like this, to have the therapist and client sit beside each other. The therapist puts his hand on the armrest of the chair,
Mm-hmm.
hand and arm, lower arm. And so then it is the client that is moving toward the therapist to create the touch. And there's, it goes very slowly with a lot of talking as to what happens with centimeters of movement. So as the client moves closer, then the therapist is asking, well, what's happening now? Are you feeling safe? Do you want to go further? Do you want to go back? Um, and so um, um, the training to become a touch and dialogue therapist really is is um, is including a wide range of ways of working um, with clients, combining the psychotherapeutic contract with ways of dialoguing about touch.
Mm. Yeah. And so the unconscious can be changed or are changed through this work.
Yes, that's clear. That is, it's as long as the contract is set up so it's firm and meets these guidelines, it's going to happen.
What's the difference between Rolfing and touching dialogue? Because you said you were also a
Yeah.
Rolfer.
Yes, actually, I'm a good person to ask that.
Yeah, you must be.
I, I trained with Dr. Rolf over
Wow.
50 years ago,
Oh my
and
God.
yeah, the Rolfing is focused on the connective tissue, which in Danish is called bindevæv,
Mm.
and it is focused to change the actually to change the molecular structure of the bindevæv, so there's more oxygen in the bindevæv, and but it's to talk on a higher level of abstraction. It's changing the connective tissue from contraction to resilience. And Rolfing is focused on physical change. Rolfing is the goal of Rolfing is to change the balance and alignment of the joints so that a person's body is supported by gravity. And the guideline for this change is to orient, to change the person's body so the center of their joints is aligned with a vertical line.
Mm.
Because the way gravity works, this was Dr. Rolf was brilliant, and she was ingenious to she worked as a biochemist and with I'm mixed up now, molecular biology,
Mm.
and but she transformed what she knew from the electron microscope to a treatment system for people. And to me, that is really, really genius. And Rolfing helps people with function, with flexibility, and um, most this contraction means most people are standing um, 1 or 2 or 3 centimeters shorter than their potential.
Mm.
And Rolfing literally allows people to reach their height, the potential of their height. And this comes from the space in between the joints. The bones don't grow with Rolfing, but the space in between the joints, especially the backbones,
Mm.
increase.
Mm.
People get taller. And she also realized that gravity was influencing humans, not only buildings and trees. And if we're aligned and balanced properly, then gravity supports us. If our back is curved or if our hips are forward of our ankles, then gravity is actually pulling us down.
Mm.
So
And
that's,
it should pull us down, right?
so in one sentence, Rolfing is a physical treatment,
Right.
and Lipton dialogue is a psychotherapy is a body-centered psychotherapy.
Okay, so you took exactly what Rolfing is and then put therapy on top of it?
No, I first became a Rolfer,
Yeah.
and um, um, I just I was really when I was in between my first and second training class for Rolfing, an experienced Rolfer had too many clients, and he just gave me a practice. So when I came back from the final training, I had a practice, and the first you could say I have an angel watching over me
Yeah.
because I've been so fortunate in many different situations, and and the first with my first 6 Rolfing clients, 4 of them had um, catharsis. Sometimes with physical jerking, sometimes with crying, sometimes with sobbing, sometimes with laughing, sometimes with ecstasy. But on the table, they had these cathartic experiences, and some of them, in different sessions, but repeatedly. And so, and I was only trained as a Rolfer, and I had a master's degree, Master of Fine Arts degree in photography, and a bachelor's degree in philosophy and psychology. So I didn't have a training to deal with these emotions. So I simply wanted to feel more comfortable.
Mm.
Um, the I had worked when I had worked as a mental health worker and received training, so I actually handled it okay, but it was stressful for me. I wanted to be less stressful doing my Rolfing. So that's when I very quickly started a psychotherapy training, which this is now back in the 70s. So in those days there wasn't any school where you could learn psychotherapy. So I just went to workshops once a month, and I learned a great deal because already by then I had several psychotherapists as a client, and when I went for my own needs, but with each psychotherapist I had, I would take notes as, well, they did this, what worked, what didn't work. So I was evaluating the effectiveness of these different modes or styles of therapy. So I took a great deal of training without being without going to school, and became a psychotherapist. So so um, so what was your question?
Amazing. No, it was just that you had the Rolfing and then you had the psychotherapy, and then how did this form into touching dialogue?
Okay,
But as
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
hearing you, it sounds like,
I've been answering your question
yeah.
because um, so so um, um, so then I became a psychotherapist. So then I was much more comfortable, and actually, if people wanted to talk while they were receiving Rolfing, I would talk with them, and very quickly, um, I have a I have an extremely high aptitude for structural visualization, which means that Rolfing is very easy for me because I can see the layers of I can from the outside contour of the body, I can imagine what the layers of connective tissue are inside. And so that makes the Rolfing very easy. So it was very easy for me to talk and actually do psychotherapy while I was Rolfing. And for some people that was appropriate, for some people that was not appropriate. So I would only start talking more if we had a contract to do that, an agreement with them.
Mm.
So so then I just refer back to my previous story or answer,
Yeah.
because then from that, um, after 2 or 3 years, I saw that people were benefiting but not satisfied, benefiting and not completely satisfied.
Mm.
So they would stop and say, "Well, I want more. I'm gonna look around for something spiritual or some other therapist or you know go to Chile and take a 40-day training or do something. I was working in those days. I was working in Manhattan. I've been fortunate enough to work on many different cities around the world. So and actually have live in different places. But in those days, I was working in New York, and I had very interesting clients. So they wanted more. So then I started writing in between sessions. So that's how touch and dialogue developed. But I'm really shortcutting, or no, I'm referring briefly back to what my answer before.
No, it's really good. It's really recognizable with clients saying, for me as an astrologer, I get that a lot. Like, this is one part of the puzzle, and now they're gonna seek different things out. And we're all humans. We need to do that for ourselves. But that's actually also a reason why I have therapeutic astrology, because I'm not personally satisfied with that people don't get enough out of astrology, which is something that I found to be enormous and healing if in the right context. So I just really recognize that. And I thought I would say a little bit about your astrology, but before I'd like to ask you this huge question, and you can answer however long you want to. But the question is, what do you want to leave us with? Now you've built this, you've studied this, you've given it and contributed by founding this method and philosophy. What can you talk about what it is you really want people to learn and discover and get out of it?
Well, in terms of people who would be listening to our conversation, they may become more aware of the importance of their skin as a medium of communication. It's actually the first medium of communication. Something I've learned. See, I and some of the people who I've trained, we've tried to promote touch and dialogue, and we realize that actually the people who I've attracted, the people who have chosen to train, are people who have either been my clients or been clients of other touch and dialogue therapists. And so when we've tried to promote it, we really have not succeeded, even though we've had we've used social media in a very good way and paid money to promote it. And we realize is that it's something that needs to be experienced. And the experience is convincing.
That
And
makes sense. Yeah.
to read about it or to see pictures or it is interesting and stimulating. It's a thought, but isn't convincing. So I've trained quite a few people here in Denmark, and there is a homepage where people can find touch and dialogue therapists. And so I would, if someone wants to experience touch and dialogue, and if they want to change their life, I would encourage them to find one of these therapists and take a session. And I'm still working, so I have an office in Oosterbro and work 1 day a week. So, but the therapists I've trained are very competent, and I recommend them highly. So that would be my answer to your question.
Wow, that is so great. So that makes a lot of sense, that you need to experience it when it is based on the body and the whole communication piece. I feel like, David, that you've said so many wonderful, delicious things that could be unfolded even more. But I'm so appreciative and so happy that I got to speak with you at all. And
I realize you're closing, but there are two practical things I'd like to say.
Yeah.
Because I don't know how large your audience is, but I do know it's international. So if a person is looking for the homepage, they need to look for touching and then a dash, bindestreg in Danish, but a dash in English, and then dialogue. And sometimes it comes up with just touching dialogue, but the dash will help. And something else I'd like to mention in terms of the the um, the caring and the focus on touching dialogue is very much focused on the inner child. And I would just like to mention that I've made a film which isn't specifically about touching dialogue, but it conveys the same values and the same philosophy about respect for the being inside of a body. And this film is on YouTube, and the title of it is A Letter to Your Inner Child from a Good Father. And so it is the voice of a good father. It's an animated film. It is only 20 minutes long and has beautiful music in it. So it's the voice of a good father talking to the inner child of whoever is watching it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'll make sure to link people up with that. And I'm glad that you mentioned the video because that is so touching. That is, it is a really, it is such a wonderful idea, first of all, and then practice for those of us who've not had that loving father, and then to hear you
Exactly, you get
guide
it.
it.
Yeah.
That's,
I get responses from people who've seen it, and
yeah.
they say that after 5 minutes into it, they're crying the rest of the time. They're deeply moved.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a lot. Yeah. In a good way.
Yeah, it is. It's very profound.
Yeah. So I just wanted to mention just shortly your astrology that you are Libra, you have a lot in Libra, and that is for sure the dialogue. That is the perfect conversationalist in that archetype of Libra, and it's also with that when you are so good with people, then sometimes you compromise too much. So I think that's even in your DNA, that whole theme that you know that very well. And then I love that you have Taurus ascendant because then that is really bringing spirit and form together. It's perfect. And your Pisces South Node is also something that I notice in this connection, in this context of relating it to what you've done, because Pisces South Node is both the whole spiritual realm, but also just this that it's such a call for boundaries. It's so raw and it's so innocent that it can go very, very wrong. I mean, it's not in your case, but it could have. And so, what you've done is really inspiring in terms of how to manage that south node, that karmic imprint, and taking into the Virgo north node about being boundaried and uh, and that whole interplay between what you were talking about, openness and I guess contraction or
Yes.
stuff. Yeah, that's really wonderful, and I just love that it's Libra and it's a dialogue
Yeah. Yeah.
because the Libra, you need the other person to find yourself. How
Yeah.
how does it land? You can disagree for sure.
Well, I feel like I know myself and accept myself without needing to be a
Sure.
therapist or to meet with clients. And I wanted to echo positively something you said that when you're talking about Libra and the need to compromise, because one reason that I've been determined to pursue psychotherapy until I felt more peaceful inside myself was because as a child I compromised a great deal to survive a dysfunctional family.
Mm.
Um, So it was dysfunctional emotionally in terms of living standard, and on one level the parents were very caring, but the dynamic, I had three siblings, and the dynamic between the six of us was dysfunctional. So I was the youngest, and I really starting at a very young age, I did what I could to make it more peaceful, and this was compromise from who I really was. So
Yeah.
I really had a lot of I had deep patterns of adaptation to overcome with myself.
Yeah.
So I'm very grateful for the psychotherapists I've chosen along the way, and have well, I'm still on that path.
For sure. For sure.
Yeah.
It's just new levels of it as we grow, right? And
Yeah.
I just for reference, I didn't mean that you need other people like that. It's just in the archetype. When we talk about a person, we need a lot of more information about your specific also evolution level of
Mm.
evolution, and that's obviously in a very spiritual direction because of the work that you do and have done. But just within the archetype of Libra, we say that it needs it's when the psyche needs to discover that interplay. What can we do together?
Mhm.
And I need something in myself. Wow, you have that over there. Now maybe we can exchange. So I just like it in terms of the dialogue, with the touching
Yeah.
dialogue, right? It's not just you doing it. You're getting information.
Yes.
Mm. Mm. Okay. I absolutely love this, David. Thank you so much for meeting with me.
Yes, I enjoyed this conversation.